The Galactic Council thought they were containing humanity with a single ultimatum. They never expected us to respond with a single word that would reshape the entire galaxy. The massive Earth orbital station Alpha 7 rotated slowly against the backdrop of humanity's blue home world. Sleek vessels moved in perfect formation, docking and undocking with the precision that had become humanity's trademark among the stars. This gleaming station represented everything humans had achieved since joining the galactic community: technological advancement, diplomatic success, and hope for a peaceful future among the stars. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the station's primary council chambers, her weathered face reflecting years of command and the weight of responsibility. At 52, she had seen humanity's first contact, the negotiations for Galactic Council membership, and the subsequent 18 months of what everyone believed was successful integration into galactic civilization. Around her, 12 officers from Earth's finest stood at attention, their crisp naval uniforms bearing the insignia of humanity's space fleet. 18 months, Admiral Chen said, her voice carrying across the chamber. That's how long we've been members of the Galactic Council. 18 months since we thought we'd found our place among the stars. 18 months since we believed that reason and diplomacy would guide our species into a golden age. The holographic display before them showed the official seal of the Galactic Council, 7 interlocking rings representing the major spacefaring civilizations. Until recently, humanity had been proud to be the 8th ring, the newest addition to this ancient alliance. The seal rotated slowly, casting ethereal blue light across the assembled faces. Commander Martinez, Chen's second-in-command, stepped forward. His dark eyes showed the same controlled fury that simmered beneath the surface of every human present. Admiral, the Zephyrian ambassador is requesting immediate audience. They claim it's regarding the emergency resolution passed by the Council. Chen's jaw tightened. The emergency resolution. 3 days ago, while humanity's representatives were returning from a diplomatic mission to the Outer Rim, the Galactic Council had convened in secret session. What they decided would forever change humanity's relationship with the galaxy. Let them come, Chen said. It's time we heard their justification face to face. The council chamber's main doors hissed open with mechanical precision. Ambassador Zektar glided in, his serpentine form moving with the fluid grace characteristic of the Zephyrian species. His scaled skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that indicated formal diplomatic protocol, but his large, compound eyes betrayed something else entirely, guilt mixed with resignation. Behind Zektar came representatives from 6 other council species. The crystalline Vorthak, whose bodies chimed softly with each step, the insectoid Clith, whose chitinous armor reflected the chamber's lights, and others representing civilizations that humanity had considered allies. Each bore the formal regalia of their species, but none would meet the humans' direct gaze. Admiral Chen, Zektar began, his voice carrying the mechanical precision of a universal translator. I come bearing the official decree of the Galactic Council Emergency Session 847 Alpha. An emergency session we weren't invited to, Commander Martinez interjected, his voice sharp with accusation. An emergency session called while our diplomatic team was in hyperspace, conveniently unable to participate or even know it was happening. Zektar's bioluminescent patterns flickered, what passed for nervousness among his species. The nature of the emergency required immediate action. The council could not wait for all members to return from their respective missions. Admiral Chen stepped forward, her boots clicking against the metal deck plating with military precision. What emergency, Ambassador? What threat was so great that the council had to meet in secret and exclude humanity from the discussion? The Zephyrian ambassador's head lowered slightly, and when he spoke again, his words carried the weight of a civilization's judgment. The emergency, Admiral Chen, is humanity itself. A chill silence fell over the chamber. The human officers exchanged glances, hands instinctively moving closer to their sidearms, not in threat, but in the unconscious response of warriors who sensed danger. Explain, Chen said, her voice deadly calm. Zektar activated a holographic projector embedded in his diplomatic sash. Images filled the air between them. Star charts, colony reports, military assessments, and population growth projections. In the 18 months since humanity joined the Council, your species has established 47 new colonies, launched 63 deep space exploration missions, and increased your fleet size by 300%. All within the guidelines established by Council Charter, Martinez shot back. Every colony properly registered, every mission approved by the appropriate committees. Yes, Zektar acknowledged. Technically, humanity has violated no specific regulation. However, the rate of your expansion has concerned the elder species. The Vorthak representative stepped forward, its crystalline structure creating harmonious tones as it moved. When it spoke, the sound was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze translated into words by the chamber systems. In our observations spanning millennia, no species has ever expanded so rapidly while maintaining such aggressive territorial acquisition and resource exploitation. Aggressive? Admiral Chen's voice rose. We've maintained peaceful relations with every species we've encountered. We've shared our technology freely, contributed to Council defense initiatives, and followed every protocol to the letter. That is precisely the problem, said the Clith representative, its compound eyes glittering. Your compliance is not the issue. Your capability is. The truth began to dawn on the humans present. This wasn't about what humanity had done. It was about what humanity could do. Zektar's pattern shifted to deeper, more formal colors as he continued the revelation that would change everything. The Council has conducted extensive analysis of human civilization, examining your history, your psychology, and your potential for future development. New holographic displays materialized, showing Earth's bloodied history, wars, conquests, empires rising and falling in endless cycles of violence and renewal. But interspersed with the darkness were flashes of brilliance, art, science, philosophy, moments of transcendent beauty and discovery. Your species is unique in the galaxy, the Zephyrian continued. Most civilizations require thousands of years to develop spaceflight, thousands more to achieve interstellar capability, and millennia to reach the level of technological sophistication required for Council membership. Humanity accomplished all of this in mere centuries. We're fast learners, Martinez said dryly. Is that a crime? The Vorthak's crystalline form chimed with what might have been laughter. Not a crime, Commander, an existential threat. Admiral Chen felt the pieces falling into place, each revelation more damning than the last. You're afraid of us. Not afraid, Zektar corrected. Terrified. The Clith representative activated its own projection system, showing comparative evolutionary timelines. In the 6 million years since the founding of the Galactic Council, no species has ever demonstrated humanity's combination of rapid technological advancement, aggressive expansion, and adaptive capability. Your war-making capacity alone exceeds that of civilizations 10 times your age. We haven't made war on anyone, Chen protested. No, agreed the Zephyrian. You haven't. But the potential remains, and that potential grows exponentially with each passing year. The Council's xenobiologists estimate that within a century, humanity could theoretically challenge the combined military might of all Council species. The weight of accusation hung heavy in the recycled air of the space station. These beings, these allies, had been studying humanity like specimens in a laboratory, calculating threat assessments and running projections on human expansion like generals planning for war. So what is the Council's decision? Admiral Chen asked, though something deep in her gut already knew the answer. Zektar's bioluminescent patterns shifted to the deep crimson that indicated grave pronouncement. By unanimous vote of the 7 founding species, humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be abandoned within 1 standard year. All human vessels currently in Council space must return to Earth immediately. Trade agreements are suspended indefinitely. The chamber erupted as human officers shouted questions and protests, but Chen's voice cut through the chaos like a laser blade. Unanimous vote? All 7 species agreed to this? All 7, Zektar confirmed, including the Andromedans who we saved from the dark matter storms in the Kepler sector. Yes, including the Taucedians whose colony ships we escorted safely through pirate-infested space. Yes, including the Proximans whose children we've been educating in our universities for the past year. Zektar's patterns dimmed. Yes, Admiral. All 7 founding species voted for humanity's expulsion. Commander Martinez stepped forward, his hand now resting openly on his weapon. And if we refuse? If we don't abandon colonies where families have built their lives? If we don't recall exploration ships that are months away from groundbreaking discoveries? The answer came not from Zektar, but from the massive view screen that suddenly activated along the chamber's far wall. It showed the space around Earth's orbital stations, and what it revealed made every human present draw breath in shock. A fleet surrounded them. Hundreds of alien vessels from all 7 Council species, arranged in perfect siege formation around Earth and its orbital installations. The message was clear: comply or face annihilation. The revelation of the alien blockade sent shockwaves through the chamber, but Admiral Chen's reaction was not what the alien ambassadors expected. Instead of fear or desperation, something else flickered in her eyes, something that had been dormant during humanity's peaceful 18 months as Council members. Something dangerous. You came here with a fleet to threaten us, she said quietly. So quietly that the universal translators had to strain to pick up her words. You called an emergency session behind our backs, voted us out of the Council, and now you're here with guns pointed at our home. Zektar's patterns shifted uneasily. The fleet is merely a precautionary measure to ensure compliance with the Council's decree. No hostile action is intended unless humanity refuses to comply. Unless we refuse to comply, Chen repeated, tasting the words. Unless we refuse to abandon our colonies, recall our ships, and crawl back to our single star system like scolded children. The Clith representative's compound eyes glittered with what might have been satisfaction. The Council understands this is difficult for your species to accept. However, containment is in everyone's best interest, including humanity's. Commander Martinez looked at his admiral, and in that look passed the understanding that comes from years of service together. Both had served in the old Earth conflicts before first contact. Both understood the implications of what they were witnessing. Admiral, Martinez said formally, request permission to contact Earth Command and recall all diplomatic personnel from Council space. Denied, Chen replied, never taking her eyes off the alien ambassadors. We have one more question for our former allies. She walked to the main console and activated the chamber's recording systems, ensuring that every word would be preserved for history. Ambassador Zektar, I want you to answer this very carefully. In your threat assessment of humanity, in all your projections and calculations, did you consider what might happen if you backed us into a corner? The Zephyrian's patterns flickered with uncertainty. The Council's analysis was comprehensive. That's not what I asked. Chen's voice cut through his response like a blade. Did any of your species consider that there might be a difference between humans at peace and humans at war? The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of life support systems. In that silence, something fundamental shifted. The human officers stood differently now, their peaceful demeanor replaced by something harder, something that spoke of a species forged in conflict and tempered by millennia of warfare. Did you consider, Chen continued, that maybe, just maybe, the reason we've been so peaceful, so cooperative, so eager to follow your rules, is because we chose to be? Zektar's bioluminescent patterns began cycling through colors rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. The other ambassadors shifted uncomfortably, perhaps beginning to realize they had made a terrible miscalculation. Admiral Chen walked to the chamber's communications console and opened a priority channel to Earth Command. Her next words would echo through history, spoken with the quiet certainty of a species that had found its resolve. Earth Command. This is Admiral Chen aboard Station Alpha 7. The Galactic Council has expelled humanity and issued ultimatums regarding our colonies and fleet movements. They have surrounded our system with a combined fleet of 7 species, apparently believing they can dictate terms to us through the threat of force. She paused, looking directly at each alien ambassador in turn. I am hereby activating Protocol 7. Recall all diplomatic personnel, release all technological sharing agreements, and send a message to every human colony, every exploration ship, every outpost in the galaxy. The communication console chirped, acknowledging the connection to Earth Command. In the background, they could hear alarms beginning to sound as humanity's military apparatus began to mobilize. What message should we send, Admiral? Came the response from Earth. Chen's smile was sharp as a blade, carrying echoes of every human warrior who had ever stood against impossible odds. When she spoke, it was with the voice of a species that had never learned to surrender. Just one word, she said. The silence in the chamber stretched, taut as every being present, human and alien alike, waited for Admiral Chen's response. The weight of history hung in the recycled air. The moment when everything would change forever, balanced on the edge of a single word. Chen looked once more at the alien ambassadors who had come to deliver their ultimatum. These representatives of species that had called themselves humanity's allies. She thought of the human colonists who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars, of the exploration crews pushing the boundaries of known space, of the children studying alongside alien species in universities across the galaxy, all of it about to be torn away because humanity had been judged too dangerous to exist as equals her. Finger hovered over the communication switch that would broadcast her message across the galaxy to every human vessel, every colony, every outpost where humanity had dared to plant its flag among the stars. "Admiral," the voice from Earth Command crackled through the speakers. "What's the message?" Chen pressed the switch. Her voice carried across space at faster than light speeds, reaching human ears from the mining colonies of Kepler 442b to the research stations orbiting Proxima Centauri, from the agricultural worlds in the Goldilocks zone to the deep space exploration vessels charting unknown sectors. War. The single word hung in the air like a death sentence, 4 letters that contained within them the full fury of a species that had fought its way up from caves to starships, that had survived ice ages and plagues and the atomic fire of its own making, that had looked at the vast emptiness between stars and decided it belonged there. The alien ambassadors recoiled as if struck. Zektar's bioluminescent patterns exploded into chaotic colors, the Zephyrian equivalent of panic. The Clith representatives' chitinous plates began grinding together in distress, while the Vorthak's crystalline form produced discordant chimes of alarm. "Admiral Chen," Zektar said, his voice carrying a tremor that the universal translator couldn't quite mask. "Surely you cannot mean war," Chen repeated louder this time, letting the word fill the chamber and spill out through the station's communication arrays. "You want to see what humans are capable of? You want to test our aggressive potential? You've surrounded our home with your fleets and threatened our families." She stepped closer to the alien delegation, and they unconsciously backed away from the terrible certainty in her voice. "You studied our history. You saw the wars, the conquests, the endless cycle of violence that forged us into what we are. But you made one critical error in your analysis." "What error?" the Vorthak representative chimed anxiously. "You assumed we were ashamed of it." The implications of those words rippled through the chamber like shockwaves. The aliens had spent months calculating humanity's capacity for violence as if it were a shameful secret to be contained. They had never considered that a species might embrace its warrior nature, might see conflict not as a last resort, but as a fundamental expression of its will to survive and thrive. Commander Martinez stepped forward, his hand now openly resting on his weapon. "You want to contain us? You want to cage us in one star system like animals?" He looked at each alien in turn. "Then you'd better make sure your cage is strong enough." The communication console erupted with incoming messages from across human space. Colony governors acknowledging the war order, fleet commanders reporting battle readiness, research stations beginning to convert their facilities for military production. In a matter of minutes, the peaceful expansion that had so alarmed the Galactic Council was transforming into something far more dangerous. "This is madness," Zektar protested. "You cannot hope to stand against the combined might of 7 spacefaring civilizations." Admiral Chen's laugh was cold as the void between stars. 7 civilizations that haven't fought a real war in 10,000 years. 7 civilizations that forgot what it means to struggle for survival. 7 civilizations that grew comfortable in their superiority. She gestured to the view screen showing the alien blockade fleet. "You brought 700 ships to intimidate us. Do you want to know how many ships humanity can put into space if we need to?" The aliens waited, transfixed by the terrible confidence in her voice. "Every single vessel we have, every courier ship, every cargo hauler, every personal transport, every orbital construction platform, every human who can hold a weapon and breathe recycled air. Because unlike you, Ambassador, we never forgot that everything worth having is worth fighting for." The truth of humanity's nature was finally revealed. Not just the capacity for violence that had so frightened the Council, but the willingness to embrace that capacity when threatened. The peaceful cooperation of the past 18 months hadn't been weakness or submission. It had been choice, and now that choice was being revoked. The chamber had become a microcosm of the galaxy itself. 2 fundamentally different philosophies facing each other across an unbridgeable gulf. On one side stood the aliens, representatives of civilizations that had grown comfortable in their established order, their careful balance of power, their assumption that might and right were determined by age and collective agreement. On the other side stood the humans, suddenly revealing themselves as something the galaxy had never encountered before. Admiral Chen walked to the main tactical display, her fingers dancing across the controls with practiced efficiency. The holographic projection shifted to show not just Earth's local space, but the entire network of human colonies and outposts scattered across dozens of star systems. "You want to understand humanity?" she asked, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Let me show you what you're really dealing with." The display highlighted each human settlement in pulsing red. 47 colonies, as Zektar had noted, but the Admiral's presentation revealed something the aliens had missed in their threat assessment. "New Shanghai," Chen said, indicating a colony in the Kepler system. Population 200,000. Primary industries, heavy manufacturing, and weapons research. They just acknowledged the war order and estimate they can have a battle fleet operational within 6 months. The alien ambassadors watched in growing horror as she continued. New Texas, Proxima Centauri system. Population 150,000. Primary industries, resource extraction, and aerospace engineering. They're already converting their mining equipment for military applications. System by system, colony by colony, the true scope of human expansion became clear. What the Council had seen as peaceful colonization was, in fact, the methodical establishment of an industrial and military infrastructure that could support a war machine of unprecedented scale. Vanguard Station. Wolf 359 System, Chen continued relentlessly. Population 50,000. Primary purpose: deep space exploration and xenoarchaeology. They've just reported discovering something interesting in the ruins on Wolf 359 or for something that might give us an edge in the coming conflict. Zektar's patterns had shifted to the deep purple that indicated existential fear among his species. "Admiral, please. This conflict serves no one. The Council can reconsider." "The time for reconsideration was before you surrounded our home with warships," Commander Martinez interrupted. "The time for diplomacy was before you held a secret session to expel us from the Council. The time for peaceful coexistence was before you decided we were too dangerous to be allowed our freedom." Chen nodded toward her second-in-command. "The commander is correct. You've shown us exactly what your friendship is worth. You've demonstrated that your alliance extends only as far as your comfort level. You've proven that the moment we become inconvenient, you're willing to use force to contain us." The Vorthak representative's crystalline form created a sound like breaking glass as it spoke. "But surely you understand our position. Your species' rate of expansion, your technological advancement, your population growth, all of it suggests that within centuries, perhaps decades, humanity could dominate the galaxy." "Could dominate," Chen repeated. "Might dominate. Possibly, potentially, theoretically dominate. So you decided to act on fear and speculation rather than fact and evidence." She turned back to the tactical display, pulling up a new set of projections, not of human colonies but of human military potential. The numbers that appeared made the alien ambassadors step back in shock. Population of all human colonies, 12 million. Adult population capable of military service, approximately 7 million. Current active military personnel, 200,000. Industrial capacity for military production, estimated at 4,000 vessels per year, if we fully convert civilian infrastructure. The chamber filled with the harsh sound of the Clith representatives' chitinous plates grinding together in distress. None of their analyses had suggested such numbers. None of their projections had accounted for humanity's ability to rapidly militarize its entire civilian population. "But here's what should really terrify you," Chen continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Those numbers assume we're limited to our current colonies and resources. They assume we're fighting defensively, trying to protect what we have." She looked directly at Zektar, and in her eyes he saw something that made his bioluminescent patterns fade to almost nothing. "What if we decide to stop being defensive?" The implications hung in the air like a toxic gas. A humanity that had been judged too dangerous while peacefully expanding was about to become something far worse, a humanity with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Admiral Chen walked to the chamber's main communication console and opened channels not just to Earth Command, but to every human settlement, every ship, every outpost in known space. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, speaking to all of humanity on behalf of Earth Command and the Colonial Defense Force. 18 months ago, we joined the Galactic Council in good faith, seeking peaceful coexistence with our galactic neighbors. We followed their laws, respected their customs, and contributed to their common defense. Her voice carried across the void to human ears everywhere, from corporate boardrooms to colonial farmsteads, from research laboratories to mining platforms. Today, those same neighbors have declared us too dangerous to exist as equals. They have expelled us from the Council, demanded we abandon our colonies, and surrounded our home system with a battle fleet. They have chosen to treat us as a threat, rather than as allies. In research stations throughout human space, scientists began converting their work toward military applications. In manufacturing facilities, production lines shifted from consumer goods to weapons and armor. In agricultural colonies, farmers began calculating how much of their output could be redirected to support military operations. So let us show them what a real threat looks like. Within hours of Admiral Chen's declaration, the transformation of human civilization began. Across dozens of star systems, the peaceful infrastructure of exploration and colonization revealed its true potential as the backbone of a military machine that the galaxy had never imagined possible. The alien ambassadors, still trapped in the conference chamber aboard Station Alpha 7, watched in growing horror as reports flooded in from their respective fleets. What they had expected to be a simple show of force followed by human capitulation was becoming something else entirely. Commander Martinez received a steady stream of updates from his staff officers, each report more alarming to the aliens than the last. Admiral, New Beijing reports their shipyards can be converted for military production within the week. They estimate initial output at 50 vessels per month, scaling up to 200 per month within 6 months. Chen nodded approvingly. And the mining operations? Ceres Industrial Complex has begun full extraction protocols. They're estimating enough raw materials to support a fleet of 10,000 vessels within the year. Assuming we can maintain the production timeline. Zektar's bioluminescent patterns had faded to barely visible flickers. 10,000 vessels? That's larger than the combined fleets of all Council species. That's just one industrial complex, Martinez replied with grim satisfaction. We have 17 major mining operations across human space, not counting the smaller asteroid mining platforms. The scope of what the Council had attempted to contain was becoming clear. Humanity hadn't been expanding randomly or haphazardly. Every colony, every outpost, every seemingly peaceful settlement had been positioned to support the others, creating an integrated network of production and supply that could sustain military operations on a galactic scale. Admiral Chen activated another display, this one showing human fleet movements. Red dots began appearing throughout the projection, vessels changing course, abandoning peaceful missions, converging on strategic positions. Deep Space Survey ship Magellan, currently 3 months out from Wolf 1061, has reversed course and is en route to Earth. Estimated arrival, 47 days. The Magellan carries our most advanced sensor, arrays and long-range communication, equipment, perfect for coordinating fleet operations across multiple star systems. The Clith representatives' compound eyes tracked the movements on the display with increasing agitation. This is impossible. No species can mobilize so quickly, so efficiently. No species that hasn't spent most of its history at war, Chen corrected. You see, Ambassador, there's something you never understood about human nature. We don't just study war as an academic exercise. We prepare for it. Every colony has emergency protocols. Every civilian vessel has military conversion specifications. Every citizen knows their role in the defense of humanity. Martinez stepped forward with another report. Admiral, the Titan Forge reports that their antimatter production facility can be online within 72 hours. They're requesting permission to begin synthesizing warheads. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Even among spacefaring civilizations, antimatter weapons were considered the ultimate deterrent. Too powerful and too dangerous for anything but the most desperate circumstances. Chen's response was immediate. Permission granted. Full production authorization. Admiral, Zektar said, his voice carrying a tremor that the universal translator couldn't disguise. "Surely you cannot mean to deploy antimatter weapons against inhabited worlds." Chen turned to face the alien ambassador, and her smile was cold as the void between stars. "Ambassador, you came to my system with a fleet of 700 warships to threaten my people. You gave us an ultimatum: submit or face destruction. Did you think we would respond with anything less than our full capabilities?" The truth was sinking in for the alien delegation. They had expected humanity to respond like any other council species would, with formal protests, diplomatic negotiations, perhaps token resistance followed by grudging compliance. Instead, they were witnessing the mobilization of a species that approached conflict like a natural force, with the same inexorable determination that had carried them from a single world to dozens of star systems in mere centuries. "This is madness," the Vorthak representative chimed, its crystalline structure producing discordant harmonics of distress. "The destruction would be unimaginable." "Yes," Chen agreed. "It would be. Which is why you should have thought more carefully before threatening us." Another communication came through from Earth Command. "Admiral, we're receiving formal declarations of support from 17 non-council species that humanity has established trade relationships with. The Kepler Commonwealth, the Rigel Free Traders, the Centauri Union, they're all offering material support for our cause." The implications were staggering. While the Council had been focused on containing humanity, humans had been building relationships with the galaxy's minor powers, the independent systems, the species that had been overlooked or marginalized by the established order. Now those relationships were bearing fruit in the form of allies and resources. Chen's expression showed the first hint of satisfaction she'd displayed since the crisis began. "It seems we're not as alone as the Council assumed." Martinez pulled up another display showing the political map of the galaxy. Red markers indicated confirmed human allies, while blue showed neutral systems that were reportedly reconsidering their position. The Council's 7 founding species, marked in green, suddenly looked very isolated indeed. "Admiral," Martinez said, "we're getting reports of unrest in several Council border systems. It seems news of humanity's expulsion is spreading and not everyone approves of the Council's methods." The alien ambassadors exchanged glances filled with growing panic. What they had intended as a simple containment operation was spiraling into something far more dangerous, a potential galaxy-wide conflict that could shatter the established order they had spent millennia building. The transformation of human space continued at a pace that defied the aliens' understanding of how civilizations were supposed to function. Every report that reached the chamber aboard Station Alpha 7 revealed new layers of preparation, new evidence that humanity had been far more formidable than anyone had imagined. Admiral Chen stood before the main tactical display, which now showed the full scope of human military mobilization. What had been a scattered collection of peaceful colonies 18 months ago was revealing itself as something far more sophisticated, a distributed civilization, designed from the ground up to survive and prevail in hostile conditions. "You want to know what should really worry you?" Chen asked the alien ambassadors. "It's not our industrial capacity, though that's considerable. It's not our population, though we breed faster than any council species. It's not even our technology, though we advance at a rate that apparently terrifies you." She gestured to a new display showing communication intercepts from across the galaxy. "What should worry you is that you've just demonstrated to every minor power, every independent system, every species that's ever felt marginalized by the Council, that the moment you become inconvenient, you'll be cast out and threatened with destruction." The intercepted communications painted a picture of a galaxy in turmoil. Systems that had remained neutral for centuries were suddenly reconsidering their positions. Species that had accepted Council authority without question were beginning to ask uncomfortable questions about consent and representation. Sektar's bioluminescent patterns had stabilized into the deep blue that indicated profound regret among his species. "We never intended for this situation to escalate to this degree. But you did intend to threaten us with annihilation if we didn't comply with your demands," Martinez pointed out. "You did intend to surround our home system with a battle fleet. You did intend to force us to abandon colonies where human families have built their lives." A new communication arrived from deep space, and Martinez's expression grew grim as he read the report. Admiral, the exploration vessel Cousteau has made contact with the Vegan Confederacy in the Lyra sector. The Vegans are requesting formal alliance with humanity and offering the use of their shipyards for military production. Chen raised an eyebrow. The Vegans? I thought they were isolationists. They were, until they learned about the Council's actions. Apparently, the idea of a galactic government that expels members through secret votes and enforces decisions with military threats doesn't sit well with them. The ripple effects were spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. What the Council had intended as a surgical containment of one troublesome species was becoming a galaxy-wide crisis of legitimacy and authority. The Clith representative stepped forward, its chitinous plates scraping against each other in agitation. This could destabilize the entire galactic community. Centuries of peaceful cooperation could be destroyed. Yes, Chen agreed. It could be. And whose fault is that? The question hung in the air like an accusation. The alien ambassadors were beginning to understand that they had fundamentally misread not just humanity, but the galaxy itself. By acting out of fear rather than wisdom, by choosing force over diplomacy, they had set in motion events that could reshape the entire galactic order. Another report arrived, this one from the inner system. Admiral, Earth Command reports that the lunar shipyards have been fully converted to military production. They estimate they can launch their first battle group within 30 days. 30 days? The Vorthak representative chimed in distress. That's impossible. Shipyard conversion should take months, even years. Martinez smiled grimly. That assumes you're starting from scratch. We've had the conversion plans ready for decades. Every civilian facility in human space has military specifications on file just in case. The truth was becoming clear to the aliens. Humanity hadn't been caught off guard by the Council's actions. They had been prepared for this possibility from the moment they first encountered other species. The peaceful expansion, the eager cooperation, the careful observance of Council protocols. All of it had been backed by contingency plans for exactly this scenario. You planned for this, Zektar said, and it wasn't a question. We planned for the possibility, Chen confirmed, not because we wanted war, but because we've learned that the universe is not always a friendly place. Every human child learns the story of Cassandra, the prophet who warned of disaster but was never believed. We decided to be the ones who were prepared. A priority communication arrived from the Outer Rim, and when Martinez read it, his expression shifted to something approaching satisfaction. Admiral, the research station at Kepler 438 reports a breakthrough in their exotic matter studies. They believe they've developed a new form of faster-than-light drive that could give our fleet significant tactical advantages. The implications were staggering. Not only was humanity mobilizing its existing military potential, but its scientists were continuing to advance their capabilities even during the crisis. The Council had acted to contain a threat they perceived as manageable, only to discover they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. Admiral Chen walked to the viewing port that looked out over Earth's blue marble, her reflection ghost-like in the reinforced transparisteel. Behind her, the alien ambassadors waited in growing dread for what she might say next. You know what the real tragedy is? She said without turning around. We actually liked you. We respected your civilizations, admired your achievements, looked forward to learning from species with thousands more years of experience than us. Her voice carried a note of genuine sadness that was somehow more terrifying than her earlier anger. We came to the Council with open hands and open minds. We shared our technology freely, contributed to common defense, followed your protocols even when they seemed inefficient or outdated. We wanted to be good galactic citizens. She turned back to face them, and in her eyes they saw the death of whatever respect humanity had once held for the Council. But you taught us something valuable today. You taught us that in this galaxy, friendship lasts only as long as you're not inconvenient. Respect extends only as far as you're not threatening. Alliance means nothing when fear overrides wisdom. The next report to reach the chamber came from the Tau Ceti system, and it carried news that made the alien ambassadors realize just how completely they had miscalculated. Commander Martinez read from the datapad with barely concealed satisfaction. Admiral, the human colonies in Tau Ceti have made formal contact with the Tau Cetian resistance movement. Apparently, there are significant populations on the Tau Cetian homeworld who are dissatisfied with their government's decision to support humanity's expulsion. Chen's eyebrows rose. How significant? Approximately 40% of their population, according to these intercepts. They're calling for their government's withdrawal from the council vote and formal apology to humanity. The Tau Cetian ambassador, who had remained silent throughout most of the proceedings, finally spoke up. His voice carried the harmonic undertones characteristic of his species, but now those harmonics were discordant with distress. This is impossible. Our people support the council's decision. Some of your people, Martinez corrected, but apparently not the ones whose children we've been educating in our universities. Not the ones whose ships we escorted safely through the Pirate Nebula. Not the ones who remember that when your colony ships were stranded in the neutral zone, it was human rescue vessels that brought them home. The scope of the political crisis was expanding by the hour. What the Council had intended as a unified response to the human threat was fracturing along lines they had never anticipated. Species that had voted for humanity's expulsion were discovering that significant portions of their own populations disagreed with that decision. Another communication arrived. This one from the Proximan system. Admiral, we're receiving a formal protest from the Proximan Academic Council. They're refusing to comply with orders to expel human students and faculty from their institutions. The Proximan government is reportedly considering reversing their council vote. Zektar's bioluminescent patterns had faded to almost nothing, the Zephyrian equivalent of despair. This was supposed to be a simple containment action. How did it become a galaxy-wide crisis? Admiral Chen's laugh was bitter. Because you forgot the first rule of politics, Ambassador. Actions have consequences. When you betray people who trusted you, word gets around. When you use threats instead of diplomacy, others take notice. When you demonstrate that your alliance is conditional on convenience, everyone starts wondering if they might be next. A priority alert flashed on the main communication console, and Martinez accepted the incoming transmission. His expression grew grim as he listened to the report from Earth Command. Admiral, we're receiving intelligence reports from across Council space. It appears that several species are mobilizing their own fleets ostensibly for security purposes. The Andromedans have activated their reserve squadrons. The Centaurans have recalled their deep space patrol vessels. Even the Vorthak are reported to be bringing their crystal ships out of long-term storage. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Council species, having threatened humanity with overwhelming force, were now facing the possibility that their intimidation tactics might have triggered the very conflict they had sought to prevent. They're preparing for war, the Clith representative said, its voice barely above a whisper. No, Chen corrected. They're preparing for the war you started when you decided to solve your problems with threats instead of dialogue. The tactical display updated to show the latest fleet movements across the galaxy. What had been a stable, peaceful configuration of forces was rapidly becoming a complex web of mobilization and counter-mobilization. Species that had coexisted peacefully for millennia were suddenly positioning themselves for potential conflict. The Rigelians are moving their battle groups toward the Council core worlds, Martinez reported. They're citing concern for galactic stability as their justification. The Vegan Confederacy has declared a state of emergency and is reportedly offering sanctuary to any humans who wish to evacuate. Council space, came another report. 3 minor species in the Outer Rim have announced the formation of a mutual defense pact, specifically citing the Council's actions against humanity as justification for their alliance. With each report, the aliens in the chamber seemed to shrink into themselves. What they had conceived as a surgical strike to contain one troublesome species was metastasizing into the greatest crisis the galaxy had seen in centuries. Chen walked back to the main console and opened a channel to all human vessels and installations. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the weight of a species that had found its resolve in the face of betrayal. To all humans, wherever you are in the galaxy, this is Admiral Chen. The Council has shown us their true nature today. They have demonstrated that their friendship was conditional, their alliance temporary, and their respect non-existent. Across human space, the message was received by colonists and explorers, scientists and soldiers, families who had built new lives among the stars. In every case, the response was the same: grim determination and absolute unity. But they have also shown us something else. They have revealed that the galaxy is far less united than they claimed. They have exposed the fault lines in their precious order, and they have given us the greatest gift possible: clarity about who we really are and what we're truly capable of. The alien ambassadors listened in growing horror as Chen's words reached not just human ears, but the communication networks of dozens of species throughout the galaxy. We are not the peaceful, compliant species they thought they were admitting to their council. We are the children of Earth, forged in conflict, tempered by struggle, and united by the knowledge that everything worth having is worth fighting for. In the hours following Admiral Chen's declaration, the galaxy transformed. What had been a stable, hierarchical system dominated by the 7 founding species of the Council was rapidly becoming something far more chaotic and unpredictable. The alien ambassadors aboard Station Alpha 7 found themselves trapped not just physically but politically. Their own governments were frantically trying to contact them, desperate to understand how a simple containment action had spiraled into a potential galactic war. "Admiral," Commander Martinez reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 3 Council patrol squadrons. They're requesting permission to withdraw from Earth space without hostile action." Chen considered this development with the calculating mind of a military strategist. Tell them they have safe passage to leave the system, but any vessel that approaches human space again will be considered hostile. And Martinez? "Yes, Admiral?" "Make sure they understand that human space now includes every system where humans have established a presence, not just Sol." The implications were clear. Humanity was not retreating to Earth as the Council had demanded. Instead, they were expanding their definition of territory to match their actual presence throughout the galaxy. Zektar's patterns flickered weakly as he attempted one last diplomatic intervention. "Admiral Chen, surely there must be some way to resolve this situation peacefully. The Council could reconsider its decision, perhaps establish new terms for humanity's membership." "No," Chen cut him off. "The time for that passed when you surrounded our home with warships. The time for that passed when you held secret votes to determine our fate. The time for that passed when you decided we were too dangerous to be allowed our freedom." She gestured to the tactical display, which now showed the full scope of the crisis. Red indicators marked human positions throughout the galaxy. Blue showed their allies, and green marked the increasingly isolated Council systems. "Look at your galaxy, Ambassador. Really look at it. Do you see a stable, peaceful order maintained by wise elder species? Or do you see a structure built on fear, held together by intimidation, and maintained through the threat of collective punishment for anyone who grows too successful?" The truth was becoming undeniable. The Council's response to humanity hadn't been an aberration. It had been the logical extension of a system that prioritized stability over justice, order over freedom, and control over growth. A new communication arrived from the furthest reaches of human space. "Admiral, the deep space exploration vessel Armstrong reports contact with a previously unknown species in the Lyra sector. The Lyrans are requesting formal diplomatic relations with humanity and are offering the use of their space as a staging area for military operations." Martinez shook his head in amazement. "We're gaining allies faster than the Council is losing them." "Because we're offering them something the Council never did," Chen replied. "We're offering them partnership instead of patronage, cooperation instead of control, friendship based on mutual respect instead of submission to authority." The final straw came in the form of a priority transmission from Earth Command. When the message played, it sent shockwaves through the chamber that reached far beyond the walls of Station Alpha 7. "Admiral Chen, this is General Harrison at Earth Command. We have just received formal communications from the governments of 43 minor species, declaring their withdrawal from Council authority and their recognition of humanity as a legitimate galactic power. They are collectively calling for the establishment of a new galactic organization based on principles of equality and mutual respect." The silence that followed was deafening. In a matter of hours, humanity had gone from being an expelled Council member to the de facto leader of a galactic independence movement that included nearly half the spacefaring species in the known galaxy. Zektar's bioluminescent patterns had gone completely dark, a sign of total defeat among his species. "What have we done?" "You've started a war you can't win and created enemies you didn't need to have," Chen replied. "But most importantly, you've taught the galaxy what happens when you mistake patience for weakness and cooperation for submission." She walked to the chamber's main communication console one final time and opened a channel that would broadcast her words to every corner of the galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah, Chen of the Human Colonial Defense Force, speaking to all species who believe in freedom, equality, and the right of civilizations to determine their own destiny. Her voice carried across space to reach the ears of beings from 1,000 different worlds, representing dozens of species that had suddenly found common cause in opposition to the Council's authoritarian response. The Galactic Council has shown us that they consider themselves our masters rather than our partners. They have demonstrated that they believe might makes right, and that fear is an acceptable tool of governance. They have proven that their version of peace is simply the absence of resistance to their will. Throughout the galaxy, species that had never dared to challenge the Council's authority found themselves reconsidering their positions. The example of humanity's defiance was proving infectious. We reject their authority. We reject their right to dictate our future. And we reject their assumption that younger species should submit to the will of their elders simply because they are older. The revolution was spreading at the speed of light, carried by faster-than-light communication networks that the Council had built to maintain their control, but which were now carrying the seeds of their downfall. To all species who share these beliefs, we extend our hand in friendship and alliance. To all who would stand with us in defense of freedom and self-determination, we offer our strength and our support. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for her final words. And to the Galactic Council, we say this: you wanted to see what humans are truly capable of. You wanted to test our resolve. You wanted to measure our strength. Her smile was sharp as a blade and cold as the void between stars. Congratulations. You're about to find out. 6 months later, the galaxy was unrecognizable from what it had been before the Council's fateful decision to expel humanity. The 7 founding species found themselves governing barely a third of their former territory, while the new Free Species Alliance led by humanity had become the dominant political force in galactic affairs. Admiral Chen stood once again in the Council chambers of Station Alpha 7, but now the station served as the headquarters of the FSA, rather than humanity's lonely outpost in Council space. The holographic displays showed a galaxy transformed, trade routes redirected, alliances reforged, and power structures completely revolutionized. Commander Martinez, now promoted to Admiral himself, brought her the daily briefing on galactic affairs. The Andromedans have formally requested membership in the Alliance, and he reported. That would make them the 72nd species to join since we founded it. Chen nodded approvingly. Any word from the remaining Council systems? The Zephyrians are reportedly in advanced negotiations to join us as well. Apparently, Zektar has become something of a political hero on his homeworld for having the courage to deliver the ultimatum that awakened humanity's true potential. The irony was not lost on either of them. The alien ambassador who had come to deliver humanity's expulsion notice had become an inadvertent catalyst for the greatest political transformation in galactic history. And the other founding species? Martinez consulted his datapad. The Clith are maintaining neutrality but have opened trade negotiations. The Vorthak are reportedly split into factions, with the younger crystals favoring alliance membership and the elders still supporting the old council. The Tau Cetians and Proximans have already applied for membership, as you know. Chen walked to the great viewing port that looked out over Earth's orbital space. Where once the Council's blockade fleet had threatened her homeworld, now she saw the ships of dozens of species working together in peaceful cooperation. The difference was striking. Instead of a show of force meant to intimidate, this was a display of unity built on mutual respect. You know what the real victory was? She said, not turning from the view. It wasn't that we won the war. It's that we changed what victory means. Martinez joined her at the viewing port. How so? The Council thought victory meant control, their ability to dictate terms to species they considered inferior. We showed the galaxy that real victory is freedom, the right of every species to determine its own path among the stars. A communication chimed, and Martinez accepted the incoming message. After a brief conversation, he turned back to Chen with news that would have seemed impossible just months before. Admiral, that was the Rigelian ambassador. They're requesting permission to establish their new embassy here on Alpha 7. Apparently, they want to be closer to the heart of galactic civilization. Chen smiled. Not the cold, predatory expression she had worn during the crisis, but something warmer and more genuine. Tell them they're welcome. After all, that's what we're building here. A place where all species are welcome. As long as they come in peace, she turned back to the stars, thinking of all the human colonies that were no longer threatened with abandonment, all the exploration vessels that could continue their missions of discovery, all the children who would grow up in a galaxy where their potential was limited only by their imagination, rather than by the fears of others. You know, she said quietly, I almost want to thank the Council for what they did. Thank them? They thought they were containing a threat. Instead, they unleashed something far more dangerous to their old order. Hope. Hope that the galaxy could be better than it was. Hope that younger species didn't have to accept the limitations imposed by their elders. Hope that cooperation could be based on equality rather than submission. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities that had been unimaginable just months before. Humanity had not just survived the Council's betrayal, they had transformed it into the foundation of something greater. And in the end, that was the most human response of all. This HFY story explores themes of betrayal, resilience, and the transformation of conflict into opportunity. It demonstrates how humanity's response to existential threats often involves not just survival, but the complete reshaping of the systems that created those threats in the first place.